For the last several years, we have seen an explosion of white liberal Karens taking to social media and the streets to scream about the patriarchy while carrying pride flags, demanding equal rights for trans women, meaning men pretending to be women, while also vigorously supporting the Islamic extremist regimes of Palestine and now Iran. As many wonder if these women will ever see the blatant contradictions of their actions with their doctrines, I'm reminded of Shakespeare's message in Taming of the Shrew, a common sense approach that just might benefit today's modern feminist as well as society. Rosie the Riveter here, dropping more truth bombs to destroy fake news and propaganda. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell to get new videos when they are uploaded. Now let's get into today's riveting topic. In my last video, I broke down the rhetoric regarding toxic masculinity and provided evidence that shows young men are finally rejecting this Marxist propaganda and fleeing the Democratic Party. I encourage you to check that out if you haven't already. But it's not just men the Democrats need to worry about. There's evidence that young women are also starting to realize the Marxist agenda is not working out for them either. Leftists champion men in drag, taking women's trophies, scholarships, and jobs, while turning our young girls into insufferable shrews. Endless videos populate TikTok showing bitter, self-absorbed, angry, and dismissive, predominantly white women complaining about everything while solving nothing. And like Kate from Taming of the Shrew, they enjoy making everyone as miserable as they are. As much as the left tries to redirect blame, it's not conservatives who are removing women's safe spaces and forcing them out of sports, financial aid, and other educational opportunities and workspaces, and back into the home and kitchen to become baby factories for gay couples. Conservatives are not the ones convincing women to outright reject men, contending they don't need one. The left is. Wokeness is. Marxism is. As I discussed in my last video, men have responded to clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson's analysis of historically proven societal roles. But again, it's not just men. Women are also interested in this message, and for good reason. It doesn't just sound appealing. It's been studied, analyzed, and proven scientifically.
Women deeply want men who are competent and powerful. And I don't mean power in that they can exert tyrannical control over others. That's not power. That's just corruption. Power is competence. And why in the world would you not want a competent partner? Well, I know why, actually. You can't dominate a competent partner.
So
if you want
women
domination,
want to dominate, is that what you're saying?
No, I'd say women who have had their relationships impaired, their relationships with men impaired, and who are afraid of such relationships will settle for a weak partner because they can dominate them. But it's a suboptimal solution.
Do you think that's what a lot of women are doing?
I think there's a substantial minority of women who do that. And I think it's very bad for them. They're very unhappy. It's very bad for their partners, although the partners get the advantage of not having to take any responsibility.
But what gives you the right to say that? I mean, maybe that's how women want their relationships, those women. I mean, you're making these vast generalizations.
I'm a clinical psychologist.
Right, so
Most human hierarchies, as I already pointed out, are hierarchies of competence, not power.
Okay, so
that's why we don't live in a patriarchal tyranny. And so if you want to be a successful man, then you should be competent. And that will move you up the hierarchy. And that will make you attractive, and for good reason, unless you want an incompetent mate, which is possible and happens, but isn't something that I would recommend. People will sometimes choose an incompetent mate because they're intimidated by competence. And so they'll settle for someone who they don't respect because they feel that they can master them and they won't be intimidated. But it's not a recipe for a happy life, I can tell you that.
As Jordan Peterson states, competence is attractive. Women want skillful and proficient problem solvers in a partner. It's not about power, it's about capability. Unfortunately, feminists, such as Peterson's interviewer, Helen Lewis, have been brainwashed to believe that dominant, controlling patriarchies have destroyed Western societies by suppressing women for centuries. They conflate competence with dominance and demand it all must go. They couldn't be more wrong.
Technology. So, this whole patriarchy thing, I think you have no idea how pernicious and dangerous it is.
Well, no, I don't.
Men
I
and
really don't.
women
Go on.
throughout history have fundamentally cooperated to push back against the absolute catastrophe of existence, a terrible death rate, the probability of chronic starvation, early death, disease, the difficulty of raising children, with all the death that was associated with that, and to look backwards in time and say, well, basically what happened was men took the upper hand and persecuted women in this tyrannical patriarchy. It's absolutely dreadful misreading of history. It's a terrible thing to teach young women, and it's a horrible thing to inflict upon men.
If this feminist viewpoint was so accurate and beneficial, if it was really making women more happy in their relationships, then why are so many of its disciples taking to social media to complain about everything, from their partners not emptying the dishwasher right, to being totally offended because they were asked to make dinner, to being distraught because they now can't find a suitable mate? Marxist feminism is not solving so-called patriarchal societies. It's using the argument of supposed social constructs to completely dismantle Western society. Women want a man who will genuinely stand up for them while proudly standing beside them. They want a hero who will protect them as a husband and a father and as a defender. They want someone who is willing to take the slings and arrows life throws at them as a couple and as a family. It's not about dominance. It's about genuine and humble servitude and self-sacrifice. The left, however, has redefined masculinity, attacking and degrading any true shows of masculinity as they transform men into weak, ineffective beta males. At the same time, they've insisted this is what women want, convincing them to become the alpha in the relationship, which has done nothing more than spawn generations of unhappy, angry, insufferable shrews. In an article I came across in Bustle in 2017, Caitlin Ammer explains that during their annual summer vacation with friends, the women always seem to end up making dinner. She expands to explain that women primarily do all the housework, and this must change. What I noticed missing from her argument was she never indicated any concern about contributing to things like taking out the trash, changing the oil in the car, mowing the grass, raking up leaves, shoveling the snow, sawing up fallen branches, painting the house, or fixing the roof. You know, typical male gender role tasks. I researched several more articles from over the years regarding whether feminists should allow men to pay for dinner, and readers are getting somewhat conflicting advice. On one hand, many feminists maintain that allowing men to pay for dinner is just perpetrating benevolent sexism, or sexism disguised as chivalry, as such an action just reinforces the idea that women need to be taken care of. This ideology has convinced some women that even a man's true actions of kindness is nothing more than a covert gesture of oppression, which has completely crippled the dating scene for both men and women. Think about it. Instead of getting to know a man on a date, women spend their time thinking anything kind the man does is him trying to oppress her, subtly telling her she's inferior and needs to be cared for, instead of just gentlemanliness. These feminists say their ideology has freed them to find a partner for love and not being provided for. But how can you truly fall in love with someone when it's always in the back of your mind that everything they do is misogynist? On the other hand, just as many feminists argue that a man should pay because it closes the gender wage gap. The problem with that argument is countless studies have proven it does not actually exist. The skewed statistic that is always referenced lumps the salaries of all men against all women. However, since men tend to take the higher risk, higher physical labor, and therefore higher paying positions, say on oil rigs, up on electric poles and down in sewers, on garbage trucks, in road construction, and in steel plants, it looks like men get paid more. Reality is, when comparing salaries of like careers, say teaching to teaching or engineering to engineering, women's salaries are on par with men's, including those who choose the high-risk jobs I just described. Unfortunately, some feminists convince themselves allowing men to pay is one of the only benefits of the patriarchy, so they're willing to partake of the overly tyrannical, hierarchical, suppressive practice because, well, they actually benefit from it. These viewpoints, arguments, and excuses are dangerous lies, distortions, and misinformation. The focus always tends to be about what they want, what they get out of the relationship, and what the man is required to do for them to make them happy. They may occasionally discuss compromise, but the idea of freely and lovingly giving to and helping their partner is not even an option. For feminists, it's always just about women, purposely ignoring the contributions of males to the relationship and society. But that's how Marxism works. When your philosophy pendulum swings in totally opposite directions to satisfy supporters, then it's not a true tenet. It's propaganda. It is not interested in making relations between men and women fair, equal, and better. It's about putting people at odds by race, religion, classes, and in this case, genders. Divide and conquer. But not everyone is convinced. These conflicting views are leaving even some die-hard feminists rather confused as they are discovering they actually do like those antiquated practices of chivalry, which really do make them feel appreciated, despite all the left-wing Marxist doctrine stating otherwise, deeming them as sexist. Savannah Weiss wrote an interesting piece in Everyday Feminism confessing, "When I'm on a date with a guy I like and the bill comes and he tells me he'll take care of it, I do a little dance inside, because that means he definitely views this as a date, and that he likes me enough not only to make it loud and clear that this is a date, but also to give me a little gift by paying for my dinner. It feels like a way of saying, I appreciate your being here with me." And I feel guilty that I like that, because while you will always find me offering to pay for my own half of the bill, you won't often find me insisting that I cover the whole thing myself. Double standard much? Curator, writer, and proud feminist Eleanor Schicciano organized an exhibit in Australia in 2018 regarding feminism and the struggles women face living up to their ideology. She even admitted when she and her husband go to dinner, "I never take my wallet because I think he should pay." In her article, she laments that as hard as she and others try to be good feminists, they fail. I'm sure it's the feeling of sinning daily against their sacred doctrines. So not only are we forcing our men to deny their God-given natural tendencies of gentlemanliness, politeness, and provider, we are doing it to our women as well, making them feel guilty for liking true shows of respect, appreciation, and chivalry. No wonder everyone on the left is miserable. Genuine masculinity is not only vital in a healthy, functioning society, it is extremely attractive, just like authentic femininity is, which makes you wonder, why does the left hate it so much? So where has decades of feminism put American women today?
From the Wall Street Journal, American women are giving up on marriage. Major demographic shifts have put men and women on divergent paths. That's left more women resigned to being single. The numbers aren't netting out. The easiest way to explain this phenomenon, men don't want to marry one of their bros. They want to marry someone who complements their life in a way that they cannot, like to provide something in their life they don't. So if there's a woman who is a girl boss and wants to hang out and likes hanging out with the dude and they get along really well and they mesh together, they maybe even hook up, and she's like, I'm going to get that promotion. I'm looking at a $30,000 a year raise if I get this. And I've been competing. The guy's going, that's awesome. I'm really feel for you. You're one of the bros. Now I'm going to find a wife who's going to talk to me about all the kids she wants to have and how she wants to help me start a family because I can't. And so what's happening is that's an oversimplification. But what's really happening is there's a lot of women who are going to make, I got so much crap for this 6 years ago. A New York Post wrote, women are struggling to find men who make as much as they do. And let me just put it simply for all the ladies out there. If you're a 35-year-old woman who makes $50,000 a year, you will not likely find a 35-year-old guy who makes the same as you who's going to date you. Because a 35-year-old guy making $50K a year can go to a 28-year-old woman and take her out on a fancy dinner. Or a 30-year-old guy making $50,000, $60,000 a year is going to be hooking up with 24-year-olds because he's going to get on the dating app, 24-year-old, and say, hop in my car, I got a convertible, and we're going to go to the lake and then get dinner. And she's going to be like, holy crap. So the woman the same age as him, he's like, wow, I can get a younger woman.
men should be, instead of all this toxic masculinity nonsense, we should go back to, our society should go back to expecting men to be leaders and to be heads of the family. And then you should marry the woman you fall in love with.
And so, but for many of these women, they're going, society told me to get a job. Society told me to get a degree. They told me to get a promotion. They told me to do all these things. I've dedicated all my time and energy to this. Why can't I find a husband? It's like, well, because you dedicated your life to having a career. And so did the guy. And now
That doesn't feel like we've moved the women's movement in a really good direction, does it? We see the problem. Marxist ideology has infected our society by shoving God and Christ, the epitome of perfect love, out the door, replacing love thy neighbor with worship thyself, sending society into a spiral of chaos and narcissism. Okay, so how do we fix it? Well,
When a job went wrong, you went back to the beginning.
when God created Adam and Eve, he had a specific relationship in mind. In Genesis 2:18, the Lord God said, "It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him." The Hebrew term used here means corresponding to him or suitable for him, and implies strength and support, not subservience. It indicates a partner who is equal and complementary to Adam, not subordinate. God formed woman by taking a rib from Adam, making her bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh, which is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife, and they become one flesh, the first marriage. Though they are equal, God placed the burden of being the head of the household on the man, which is why when the woman was tempted by and relented to Satan by eating the forbidden fruit, God held the man responsible as he gave into the woman instead of correcting her actions. Feminism is nothing more than Satan whispering in the woman's ear, convincing her that the man is keeping her down, preventing her from living a life that she wishes. And she could have the world if she would just taste the forbidden fruit. Once God reprimanded the serpent, the woman, and the man for their sins, and prophesied that a Savior would come through the woman, who also would now have harder labor in childbirth, Adam, which actually means man, named his wife Eve, a Hebrew term signifying life or living, more specifically, the mother of all living, which, contrary to Marxism, reflects her role as the first woman and the mother of humanity. Sorry, Michelle. This whole structure is the basis for marriage, and feminism has lied to women about it for decades now, blaming everything on the patriarchy.
So
I agree that I'm married. Modern marriage has a lot to recommend it. I do also think it is a patriarchal institution. It is literally...
Of course you think that.
Well,
because you think virtually everything that occurs in our society is a patriarchal institution. And it's easy to think that because then you only have to think one thing.
You could
have a one thing answer for everything.
You could
it's
let
like
me...
It's part of the patriarchal institution.
I don't think
like,
you're obeying the rule that says maybe treat people as if they have something worth hearing. So
I'm not making a case for the patriarchal tyranny.
And
I don't think you are either. I think that you're making a case that's like a universally cliched case for the patriarchal tyranny. I don't see too much of you reflected in your articles at all.
Why do women change their names on marriage traditionally?
I don't know exactly. Why do you think they do?
Because it was to symbolize the transfer of their ownership from one family to another family. That's why in The Handmaid's Tale you have off Warren,
Oh
off Glenn.
God, Margaret Atwood. Well, she was just about devoured by the feminists last year, so that was something interesting to observe.
I think she made a very good point. She wasn't devoured by all feminists. I'm a feminist. I thought what she said about due process in cases like that is perfectly reasonable.
Mm-hmm. Well, many people didn't.
But, so why do you think women change their names when they get married traditionally? If it's not about transfer of property ownership traditionally?
I don't know if I have an opinion about that. The specific reasons for that, I'd have to look into it for a fair amount of time before I decided it, but I certainly wouldn't boil it down to a unidimensional argument about the ownership of women by men.
For goodness sake, surnames didn't even become a widespread practice until the 13th century. God placed man, his first human creation, as the leader of the family unit because he realized any good partnership has to have a designated leader. When there is an impasse regarding a decision, it is on the leader to take all viewpoints into consideration and make the final call that is best for the partnership in this case, the family unit. This is not a privilege of power, but the burden of responsibility. However, do you know where it is about patriarchy and suppression and domination? In the countries like Palestine, Pakistan, and Iran, which was actually the inspiration for Margaret Atwood's A Handmaid's Tale, the places that American feminists, who claim they stand for women, are marching in support of while also calling for the genocide of Israel. Within Islam, females are beaten and tortured for showing their hair or looking at a boy. They're circumcised to prevent pleasure, and girls as young as 9 years old are married off to much older men to start families and submit. Those are the governments feminists are proudly carrying the flag of while screaming about Trump's supposed Handmaid's Tale goal as they set the American flag ablaze. A wife, as well as the children taking a husband's name, is not about ownership. It's about responsibility, accountability, and liability. It's about building a family unit, binding the members to each other, starting with the same name. It literally defines you as one family and is the backbone of a strong society, which is exactly why Marxism is trying to destroy it. Take the feminist who feels guilty about letting her husband pay for dinner. She's married, yet even though she took the vow to be joined to her husband, she and her husband are not living as one. Why do they have his money and her money? When it all comes from the same account, it doesn't matter who pulls out the credit card. The guilt is gone. Think of it this way. If you join, say, a baseball team, your personal name may be on your back, but all teammates are a part of the specific team, which is displayed all over the rest of your uniform. Can you imagine if someone walked into their new manager and stated, "I know I play for your team now, but I still insist on wearing my former uniform"? That would be ludicrous. When you join a team, you fully commit to being a part of that team. Same with a marriage, because if you don't fully commit, then it's just that much easier to walk away when things get rough. Once on the team, if I constantly degrade, insult, and criticize and argue with my teammate, how well does that team function? It usually doesn't end well because everyone feels the tension. You have to play as a united team with the same goal where all players are essential to its success. Likewise, if I tear my husband down, I'm tearing me down too, as we are now one. If I'm trying to build a marriage, why would I constantly dismantle one half of it? Is that actually constructive? No, it's just the opposite, as nothing can be established if the entity is continuously put in ruins. So again, why has Marxism convinced women to constantly complain about their husbands and demand equal, if not more, authority within their partnerships? All it does is lead to fights, misery, and divorce because it becomes more about winning disagreements and obtaining power than truly solving a problem and the best possible outcome for the partnership. The good news is there is a way to fix it, and repairs can be made rather quickly in your own relationship. In Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew, Petruchio set out to soften the insufferable shrew Kate, not with force or demands, but by killing her with kindness. However, he did require appreciation in return. Remembering this is a fictional comedy, there is wisdom and useful advice in Shakespeare's work. Kate soon realized all Petruchio was looking for was some respect and recognition, which she gave reluctantly at first. However, the more she did, Petruchio responded by being more eager to try to satisfy Kate, which in turn prompted her to give more authentic gratitude. As a result of both allowing themselves to be genuinely thoughtful and considerate to each other, they actually fell in love. My husband is a police officer, and anyone who is part of the first responder or military family understands the challenges that come with that. About 10 years ago, we started attending some law enforcement retreats that helped both of us refocus on our marriage. Several presentations concentrated on adjusting our own mindset and actions instead of focusing on our frustrations with our partners. Sometimes we get so centered on our own wants, we dismiss not only our spouse's needs, but what issues and stresses our spouses may be experiencing, especially on the job. Their philosophy is not far off from what Shakespeare demonstrated in his play, and it really works. It's like those relationship issues have been occurring for centuries and we actually already have the solutions. gratitude, appreciation, and understanding, especially for the little stuff. For example, we thank each other for putting away the dishes, making dinner, cleaning off the counter, and doing the laundry. It doesn't mean we don't have moments of frustration or disagreements, but knowing your partner honestly does appreciate you on a daily basis allows you to let your guard down some when there is a moment of tension. In addition, when I stopped looking for satisfaction for my needs and started focusing on what I could do for my husband, he recognized that and reciprocated. I got the respect and appreciation I desired not because I demanded it, but because I gave it first. The more respect I gave my husband, the more respectful not only did he become himself, but the more respectful I became in his eyes. As a result, he showed me love and affection, which I not only craved, but it caused me to become more loving and affectionate back. It's kind of like Jesus knew what he was talking about when he said, "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." This may be old school and antiquated, but let's give this a shot, shall we? For starters, how about we stop calling every male a sexist, misogynist pig just for being a man? Because it isn't as helpful as you think it is, and is just as chauvinistic as the men you claim to be trying to fix. Next, stop making and watching TikTok videos by feminist shrews who continue to complain about every little thing a man does. There's nothing edifying or beneficial about them. In essence, stop being so darn self-centered, self-involved, and self-pleasing. Do you really think that is attractive to a man? You complain you can't find a good man. Could it be because you shove all the good ones away as you shriek at them while demanding unequivocal submission from them? If a man opens your door, give him an affirming nod and smile on the way through. If a man pulls out your chair, sit down in it with gratitude. And when he puts the dishes away, just say, "Thank you." Show some appreciation for what he is willing to do for you, and you will be amazed at how it will be reciprocated. Finally, consider this. If you can't find a good man anywhere, then maybe the problem isn't men. It may, just maybe, the person staring back at you in the mirror with a furrowed brow, angry eyes, and pursed lips. I'm sorry you bought into the wokeism, but doubling down or walking away from the system is not the answer. Maybe, just maybe, our ancestors had something right, and it really is not as bad as you have been led to believe, as those of us still buying into it still seem to be pretty happy. I'm Rosie the Riveter, and that's my 2 cents. But what do you think? Leave your comments down below. If you enjoy my content, please consider supporting my work on Patreon. You can find all my videos and my blog Liberating Letters at thefaxpaper.com. You can also start your own research on the Facts Paper by exploring the thousands of links to articles I have, including those noted in my videos, sharing the truth fake news propagandists won't. Investigate and discover the truth for yourself.